John Emina is the Executive Director, Center for Citizens with Disabilities, David Daniele. David, it's good to see you this morning.
It's my pleasure.
It's a rainy morning, but
yes.
it's really good you made it here.
Thank you.
Now, talk to us. Recently, we celebrated the signing of the Act Against Discrimination against disability or people living with disability in Nigeria. Now, today we're drawing this attention again to the realities. What has changed since the President signed that bill into law?
Well, it is awareness. It has triggered state response to disability issue. All state institutions, individuals who've come across people with disabilities across Nigeria are beginning to think about how they are going to operationalize this act, recognizing that over the years, our systems and process and procedures does not accept participation of people with disabilities. What President Muhammad Buhari has done is that he has, called attention of all to begin to change behavior, attitude towards people with disabilities.
All right. How about those people living with disabilities? What's the level of consciousness for them to hold any organization or individual accountable when they fall short of the standard?
It is the responsibility of all Nigerians, not just people with disabilities, for them to begin to look out, encourage organizations to respect the rights of people with disabilities. This sensitization is a sensitization of all Nigerians, both people with disabilities and people without disabilities. Because if you're a person without disability, you're not immune from getting disability. So all the efforts at increasing awareness, sensitization, change of behavior is the responsibility of all Nigerians. Yeah. Recognizing that people with disabilities, majority of them, lack access to education. Even this sense of self-worth is also missing within them.
Nigerians are very religious and cultural people. What is the role of religion in trying to talk about the sensitization you're talking about? Because people have, almost everyone has attachment to one religion or the other. How are you using religion and even the culture to drive home this point?
In fact, part of the things we did during the course of struggle for the assent of the Disability Act is to draw the support of religious leaders for them to pray for its attainment. Now that we have secured the law, it is our responsibility also for us to educate. Because the key challenge is that majority of Nigerians do not know what constitutes discrimination. Because people with disabilities have lived with discrimination for many years that they don't even know when they are discriminated. I always tell people, one day I was in my church and I told them that the day they signed this bill and I was sharing the testimony of God's faithfulness to people with disabilities in Nigeria. And I told them that even as I stay with them, that I'm discriminated from time to time. They were all looking at me. And I was telling them how they discriminate against me.
And I guess they were just wondering.
Yes, how do you discriminate against you?
No, but I'm glad you understand this and you're driving this point home. And we look forward to seeing changes as we move forward.
That's our expectation.
David Daniele, thank you very much for coming.
I'm happy to be here.
Right. Ministerial appointments begin. Choice of service chiefs not subject to federal character principles, says the presidency. All right. That is expected at this time like this. Then microfinance banks mauled 10 billion naira national license ahead of CBN's new capital requirement. Apex Bank says move fantastic and considers deadline extension. All right, that's on the business day this morning. All right, let's get into the issues now. There are some of the stories here that will interest you. INEC is saying they're ready for the governorship election. Sheson, I'd like to start with you on this. We remember we had assurances like this also prior to the presidential election.
With what INEC has just said, we know they are fully prepared for this gubernatorial election, considering the success they achieved with the presidential and what you cannot compare the magnitude. Even both are actually big, but this time around, we are going to the nitty-gritty of it. So with the success we got last week, it's very much important that they are ready, fully ready. There won't be any disappointment, that we can assure the public.
That's why I guess INEC has learned from some of the logistical and operational issues he gave for postponing the election for 1 week.
Absolutely. I'm not holding them by what they said. I'm actually holding them by what they did. And considering what they did last time, I believe that they are going to do even better, because the major challenge has always been collation. And at this point in time, we are not collating to Abuja. Every state is going to collate at the level of the capital. So I believe that the result will come out faster, and that's going to actually cleanse suspicion here and there, because that's the major challenge we have. Yeah. If we can cleanse suspicion, then I doubt whether we have all these tools.
But when it comes to the operational and the logistical things that INEC gave us the reason for postponing the election by 1 week, what areas would you like to see now for steps to be taken to change this?
Yeah, the key thing is the movement of some of those things to diverse states, which I believe they will synergize with other aspects, other arms, like the aviation and those other areas to move some of these things. See, they always say once beaten, twice shy. They've actually had their pitfall the last time, and now definitely they will get it right. And we will see a better thing, because we're not going to have the long list of over 70-something political parties like we had for the presidential.
You see, most of the parties were more interested in the presidential election than in gubernatorial election, maybe.
You know, when I was telling you the other day, you said it's the constitutional duty of INEC to register as many parties as possible. And if we are going to take from what we've seen over time in other African countries, I can tell you that it is not the best. It is not the best. If you read the requirement of having to register a political party, one of these, the requirement is spread. But I know about 6, 7 political parties who are only in Abuja. They don't have any office elsewhere than Abuja, but they got their registration. So the question is still on INEC. So as we are preparing for the next election, we need to. You can form political association. You do not necessarily need to translate or transform into a political party. So that is a major challenge. And our what's it called? Our voter. Our ballot paper now became a cardboard paper. People have to be, it's unnecessary.
All right. Doctor, another story here is on the page 8 of the Nation newspaper, immigration to begin compulsory registration of migrants. Now, a lot and lots of complaints from people who say that you have so many other African and other nationals in Nigeria without any documentation.
What they are just telling now is what is really long overdue. If you see the way so many nationals filtrate into our country, it's really raised a lot of alarm. And it beats your imagination when some people come into this country and they don't have valid thing to actually portray that they are, because you can beat your way and cut corners. You see, with the new system that they are going to introduce now, they are going to validate so many things, not just people coming in. You're expected to stay for 1 month. You don't extend your days if you don't need it. We have a lot of people that just beat the system, coming for 1 week, 2 weeks.
We have had, in fact, recently, the Nigerian Immigration Service, alongside in collaboration with some agencies, had identified some foreign nationals who were here and even registered and even had PVCs, as the case may be.
Of course, it is possible. And for you to achieve this thing they're working on, 2 things they need to quickly work on. First is the mindset of the people, the personnel. And second is technology. Without technology, it's going to be exceedingly difficult, if not practically impossible, to track these people. The other time, I had a program at Benin Republic just to cross at the other side and do what I had to do. And Okada man was asking me, oh, do you want me to cut corner? So, and even an official of the law was asking me, don't waste the pages of your passport. I said, okay, where do you want me to pass? So we need to work on the mindset of the people. And without technology, Nigeria is very porous. Anywhere is an exit point. Everywhere is an
but it seems the immigration is stepping up to that.
So I hope they are going to make use of technology, because it is compulsory. Now when it will even get to a point that you do not even know citizen, you can't identify who a citizen is, because we all look alike.
Where anyone, especially from the West African sub-region, where anyone can come in and say, I'm a Nigerian.
They do not treat us with the same way we treat them. I know you will have traveled around here. When you get there, the first thing they do is to suspect you. But here, everything goes.
Well, Nigeria remains a home to all black people across the world.
That is why we are not developing. This mindset of remaining home for everyone is working against our development. When you do things right, in some West African countries that we talk about today, you get there and you are wondering, are you still in Africa? Because with whistle, policeman will blow, a driver will come back. But here they've made everything complex because we believe that everything goes. It's about time for us to actually step up, and it's the right direction that the Nigerian Immigration Service is facing.
All right, so besides this, do you think that any policy should be in place to change this?
Like Dr. just said, we need technology to drive some of these things. You get to know that right from the point of entry into this country, we're able to capture who and who is. And the only way you can do some of these things if you don't invest in technology is you just be wasting resources, because you discover that after a while, when they discover that they need to maneuver it, they will definitely throw light into wherever
another thing a lot of people have said is to be able to capture the data of citizens. When you don't even know who your citizen is, you can identify who is a foreigner or something. But it's all right. We have to leave you here now. Sheson Kwade, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Dr. or John, thank you very much for coming as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
With me in the studio for that are two gentlemen, leadership and communication strategist, Dr. John, and chartered accountant, Sheson Okwade. Thank you for coming, gentlemen. Let's head to the papers this morning. I start with the Daily Sun. INEC, we are ready for Guba State Assembly elections. And then we'll move to The Nation, where it says APC shows its strength with 65 elected senators. This day, ahead of cabinet dissolution, scramble for ministerial appointment begins. The choice of service chiefs and not subject to federal character principles, says presidency. And Business Day, MFB's mall 10 billion naira national license ahead of CBN's new capital requirement. And let's go into the papers now. I'm sure the story will interest you, gentlemen. ASU, NUJ, others set agenda for Buhari, and Professor Abiodun Oguyemi, that's the national chairman of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, is saying that education is the tool for transformation and reclaiming of lost glory. I'll start with you, Cecil. They are setting agenda for the president. And the president has said that he's focusing on restructuring the economy, inclusiveness, fighting corruption, as well as security. The agenda being set by ASU, what do you make of it?
Yeah, what ASU is saying, any country that does not give the right educational stuff to its people definitely will lack the basic growth that is expected of them. The only phase be expecting ASU to do is to set realistic, goals for the government.
When you say realistic, what would you expect?
You see, we basically some of the curriculum we have in our university these days does not comply with the international standards. Some of the lecturers that we try to talk of today in our public universities still rely on some of those things that they learned like 10, 15 years ago. They are not moving with the trend of things. So it's not just setting agenda to make sure that we develop the area infrastructure-wise, but the personnel that are going to make the deliverables. That is why majority of the people you see these days prefer to go to private universities than the public, because some of the things
So that has nothing to do with the government. It has to do with the lecturers themselves.
But they have an input in some of the things that they need to do, not just government alone.
Dawson.
I think at the root of every problem we have in our society today is illiteracy, or you call it lack of education. And illiteracy in this sense is not that you have not been to school. You can actually go to school and return as an illiterate if the system is not built to conform with the reality of the community. And that's exactly what has happened. Put on second quarter of 2018, unemployment rate reached the height 38%. It has never happened before. And you keep asking yourself, it's because the kind of education we get is different from the kind of education we need. So when you were setting agenda is beyond payment of ASU, we need to set an agenda. We need to build an education system that will conform with the reality of what we need as a nation. And how does that start? It starts with the building of curriculum. Our curriculum must not necessarily even align with the ones abroad, but does it actually meet the need of our people? As we talk now, we are a country of about 200 million people, and we see shortages in virtually every sector.
Well, you remember the back and forth that went on between ASU and the government as at the same last year, talking about payment and all of that, that their demands, they made several demands.
Majority of some of those demands are just things that has to do with them, basically.
But again,
isn't it part of the things that will build the system that we're talking about?
But again, if you look at it now, let's talk about budgetary provision, for example. Global standard is about 24% that you should allocate to education. We are hovering around, if you put all the budget together, and I mean state and federal government, we are hovering around 9 to 11%. We haven't even reached a reasonable level when it comes to budgetary provision. Then from there, you go to the curriculum that I talk about the other time. Then you talk about even using the budgetary allocation for the right purposes. These are some of the things, and it does not really rest on the president alone. We just need somebody who has the willpower to say, oh, I want to drive education, the education that is going to build people out of poverty, because at the root of every problem we have is
education.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on now to Business Day. And the story here says, NDLEA nabs 36 for drug abuse inquirer, says inhaling of pit latrine now a trend among youth. Youth involvement in drug abuse is quite a source of worry now, because when you look at the percentage, it's increasing on a daily.
It will continue to increase. Why did I say this? We've lost the value that we used to have before now. I keep telling in the video, while we're growing up, there is this avenue that you have people that keep watch over you besides your parents, that can discipline you outside your biological parents. But these days, you discover that people have that freedom to do whatever they like, and everybody keeps their eyes off what should be done. And this youth that we're talking of these days, you know, it is this era while we're growing up, some of the drugs that they take this day, tramadol, like codeine, these are drugs, you know, that then you took if you have cough or malaria. But these days they take it, and it's quite appalling.
Access to these drugs, but at some point there was a ban on codeine. Yeah. But then it seems that is not even stemming the tide of the abuse of drugs or substance.
Most times the greed of one can become the doom of all. And that's what we have come to realize. Because somebody wants to make gain, it makes some of these things available. But beyond that, I said it the other time, a country of 200 million people, frustration is everywhere, except if you want to lie. Frustration is on the street of Nigeria.
So frustration is what is pushing them.
It's one of the reasons. If you are frustrated and you don't have people to talk to you genuinely, and you don't even have a hope of tomorrow. So for us it's a very big issue, but the government, the parent, and every one of us must put our hands on the deck for us to solve it. An average Nigerian youth now goes home perhaps with 40,000 naira, or in some cases 20,000 naira. And these people get frustrated. The only thing they can rely on is codeine. But we have to also lay emphasis that these things are not going to solve any of the problem.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your contribution on the paper review this morning.